Well, I'm delighted to have been asked to, on behalf of Winnie's friends at Manners, the disciples at her feet, to introduce this short video about the remarkable events of the Hamilton by-election of 1967.
Winifred Margaret Ewing,
Scottish nationalist.
18,397.
Winnie Ewing's spectacular win in Labour's safest seat rocked the political establishment.
I was a threat at that time, or seemed a threat, to both parties, because they had a nice cosy carve-up. It was either a Labour seat or a Tory seat and a few marginals. They knew where they were. They had the trade union hacks and they had the local lairds, and it was all nice and tidy, and lo and behold, a safe majority like Hamilton toppled, and they suddenly thought, if this can happen in Hamilton, it can happen anywhere. And in the words of Oliver Brown, a shiver ran along the Scottish Labour backbenches looking for a spine to run up.
The Labour candidate, who was defending a majority of 16,500, thought victory was assured. They didn't count the votes here, one party insider said. We weighed them. George Leslie, who stood for the SNP in the Pollock by-election earlier that same year, believes Winnie Ewing was a big asset to the party.
I've never seen anybody with so much energy that she could project into a campaign. Every little small hall was packed. We had sometimes a community hall or a classroom with 100 people in it. And Winnie, we could talk the hind legs off a donkey, and she was great. She would just go in there and talk to them, and she would somehow make it as if she was talking personally to every single person.
Well, I think the candidate was a most refreshing, virile candidate.
I attended one of her meetings, and she's a very good speaker, and she gets her points across very well.
Did she give you enough hope for you to vote for her?
Yes, she did. One, because she's a woman, and secondly, I agreed with a lot that she said.
According to one historian, the legacy of Winnie Ewing's 1967 victory is that it put the Scottish question centre stage.
The political parties had to take Scotland much more seriously. Whitehall, Westminster, the Treasury were very much aware that they couldn't treat the UK as a unitary element. They had to recognise much more than they had previously that Scotland was distinct.
Back in the 1967 by-election, Winnie Ewing had also outlined her support for joining the European community, articulating the outward-looking vision that the SNP still holds today.
Winnie Ewing expressed her support for independence in an international context. She insisted that Scotland was part of Europe, coining the memorable phrase, "Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on."
This is Winifred Ewing, 38, a Glasgow solicitor, mother of 3 children, is the Scottish National Party's member for Hamilton.
It's by no means been a straightforward trajectory since that victory of '67. But the pivotal events of 50 years ago marked the beginning of a political phenomenon we're still feeling the effects of today.
I have to say also thanks to Hamilton for making history for Scotland and get an independent voice in Westminster. Thank you.
I was a student in Glasgow when I met my husband, or boyfriend then, John McAteer, and he was already involved and a member of the SNP. He did a lot of work in Glasgow. He lived in digs in Glasgow. We've got married. We did have a couple of children. And John was well involved. We came to Hamilton to live, and John was well involved with the Hamilton branch at the time. And as time went on, he became the organiser for the Hamilton branch, then for the constituency. Now, and of course, every year in those days in Hamilton, they would have council elections, a certain number of seats would be up, and they fought them. And they were always beaten resoundingly. And they would go fly posting and everything away out at midnight, putting posters up on walls, and then the police would appear the next day. They knew who to come for. Remove your posters, and we want your bucket of paste as evidence if we charge you. And that was a regular habit. So my bucket was ending up in Hamilton Police Station every year without fail.
Winnie's campaign was run from a wee ex-sweetie shop just at the Peacock Cross in Union Street, and that's where all the work was done, the planning was done, and all the literature and everything to hand out was there. But there was a general feeling that Winning, at the start of the campaign, winning wasn't really an option. We did it, we were going to win. What we wanted was a good result.
Well, the by-election came about because Tom Fraser, we always refer to him as Tom Fraser, who was the Labour MP for Hamilton constituency, London, had decided that they were going to move him to be head of the hydroelectric board. And so this was announced. And in those days there weren't many by-elections, but normally speaking, when they announced someone was being moved, the election would be called within 6 or 8 weeks. So we'd have a mad scramble to find a candidate. So the list, there were names on lists, we didn't have that many on lists to prospective candidates. And there were 3 chosen, Winnie being one of them. And they were invited out and they spoke to the constituency members in Hamilton, and then Winnie was the one, and she was chosen. My husband John, who he was appointed as the election agent come organiser, he said to me, "I'm going to bring Winnie Ewing out to meet you. This is our prospective candidate." And I said, "All right, fine." So which she did. And oh, she was a charming lady, she really was, and very friendly. And blathered away to her and so forth, and she was as keen as mustard, you know, to work hard and everything for the by-election. And I'll always remember her saying to John, who was lining stuff up for her, "Just anything you want me to do, any place you want me to be, fix it, tell me, and I'll be there."
At the time of the by-election was announced, I would be 23, 24 years of age, and I think I was the youngest member of the branch, and just newly married when my wife came from Aberdeen. And then came this young warrior from Glasgow who made quite a good impression on the branch, and obviously quite a good impression on the people of Hamilton later on. Plaid Cymru, they come up in buses from Plaid Cymru, from Cardiff and other places, because they came from all over. I said, a gentleman from Mull, Auburn, they came from Ayrshire, West Lothian.
People from the Highlands and the Islands phoned and asked, could they come down and help if we could find a bed for them in any of the members' houses, which was done.
As election time got nearer, the polling day got nearer, there was a wee bit of confidence, but we'd been through this before. So we had to guard against this pre-polling day exuberance and optimism that you get. But we were quite confident, you know, and then as it got nearer, we were pretty certain it was going to be 50-50. We thought we did have a bit of a chance.
So it happened that day was the first day I had a vote, and I voted for Winifred Margaret Ewing. Back to my horse, stayed at the school until closing time, back to mum for a cup of tea, and my mother said, "Let us know how your woman got on, son." I went down to the vote. The result for the Hamilton by-election was Ian Dyer, Conservative, 4,986 votes. Winifred Margaret Ewing, 18,397 votes. Alexander Wilson, Labour Party, 16,000, and that was that. There's no need to hear the last 3 digits, because 16,000 could not beat Winifred's 18,000.
They had been in Dulcerf canvassing, John and Winnie, and when they came away, 98% of Dulcerf were voting for Winnie, and 2 people were out. So it was like 100%, and I think that was the night that my husband thought, he said that to me after he took Winnie home, and he came in and he said, "You know, I think we might win this." Well, I hadn't seen the canvass returns, but he was, and he must have been sitting counting up, and he said, "I think we just might win this." you know, and I thought, oh dearie me, he's get carried away, as you do in a campaign. You go in to win. But we were used to going in to win and not win. And I thought, oh dear, he's get carried away again. But we pulled it off and it was wonderful, wonderful.
We were sitting in the fire and we waited up till the result come through. And I can remember on the screen it said, Nationalist take Hamilton. And we couldn't believe it. We just hugged each other for about 5 minutes. We were so absolutely delighted.
And we had a wee whiskey, I have to say.
Yeah, we did. And I don't know how long it took to get to sleep that night. We were just so keyed up, so buoyant, we couldn't believe it.
On the actual voting day, my husband John, he was up at 6 in the morning and away down to Peacock Cross, as we called it, where the shop was, or the offices were. And we had plenty of workers who came in. Now I think when they came into the office, there were 2 or 3 rooms down there, as I remember it. When they came in, they used to go straight out and work. But then they could come back when they'd done a shift. If they were going to do more, they were allowed a cup of soup or a sandwich or 2 and a cup of tea, like 10 minutes worth. Then here's your next batch, on your way. Nobody was allowed to stand about and blare for half an hour. If you came, you worked. And that was the way the job was done. Well, a car was sent for me to take me down to the count. I was delegated, what an honour, to stand at the table along with Alan Niven. And it was kind of disbelief because they kept bringing the bundles over and our votes, the stacks were piling up and falling off the table. And Alan Niven was panic stricken. He said, Winnie Ewing's, her votes are landing on the floor, look at the floor. And he's picking them up and putting them back. He says, Kate, you watch that, I'm away to get another table. So he went scampering off. And he did get another table after a wee bit of a word or two with somebody and brought it back and put all the blue. And I see him now, lovingly, these bundles of votes, and he's putting them in and they're piling up. And you could see we were there. And then it was my husband, he came round and he whispered into my ear, he says, we've won it, but don't say a word. And we were all standing there as if it was a wake. And he said, so I declare Winnie Ewing the candidate for Hamilton. Well, yeah, we were all up their feet. And when she came out, oh, they were all outside and the pouring rain. Some had a brolly, but they didn't care, they were drenched. Then we got word from Edinburgh, Rosemary Hall was her name. She was the secretary on the executive of the SNP at that time. And she said she would book a train. I mean, this was unbelievable, the cost of that. But to pay her tickets, you know, I think it was £10 return or something, if you wanted to go on the tartan train, she called it, and but it would take us to London. So, of course, loads of nationalists scrambled up a £10 to get on the train, and we boarded it at Central Station. And you know how wonderful it was to go to Central Station and see again a lot of the faces who had been out and helped us during the by-election, and they'd come from all over Scotland, you know, to get on this train.
And we were getting picked up in Hamilton. The train was starting off in Glasgow and was picking people up in Hamilton, and then it was going on to Edinburgh and picking up more people in Edinburgh. And that's where we got the daily paper, which told us what a wonderful time we had travelling down to London. But we were still in Edinburgh.
I remember being in the train, and of course everybody was hyped up. We were on a high, you know. It was a great experience.
So we landed down in London, out of the train, and this is the funny bit. Big Hugh MacDonald was there. Now he was with the Herald at the time, and he was head of advertising for the Herald, so he had a big job. And his boss knew, now the Herald, think about it, Tory paper. But his boss, he got on well with him. And Hugh said, well, I'm going in the Tartan Express. Very honest up front. I'm going in the Tartan Express down to London, so I'll have the day off, but I'll make it up. And his boss's last words to him said, well, OK, Hugh, off you go. But he says, Hugh, low profile, low profiles, think with the Herald, not. Well, lo and behold, they're off the train, and there's Hugh and Angus McGillivray, another good friend, well-known nationalist at the time, and a piper, and they grab Winnie, and they've lifted her all up, purple coat she'd on, and the piper's playing, and is that not the picture that went all over the papers? And there's big Hugh McDonald, and his boss saying, keep it quiet, keep it all over the papers and the television.
And it was lovely when we arrived in London, because Winnie was piped off the train. It caused quite a stir, I can tell you, in the station when we got to London. It really caused a big stir. The atmosphere was great. Well, it was a fair bit of singing, but I don't recall an awful lot of dancing.
No, well, you can't really dance much in a train.
There was a lot of singing and a lot of drinking and other things.
There was some drinking, but not.
Oh, it wasn't over the top.
It was nothing over the top.
But everybody was having a good wee drink to themselves. Well, why wouldn't you? At the end of the day.
In the SNP headquarters in 6 North Charlotte Street, as they were then, there was this fantastic picture of an incredibly glamorous woman sitting on top of a globe of the world, which I understand was taken in a park in Hamilton. And that was the first time that I came across the epic slogan, that ringing phrase which determined the impact of the Hamilton by-election. Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on.
Stop the
world, Scotland wants to
get on. Stop the
world,
Scotland
wants
to
get on.
Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on. Well, for me, when I was selected in 2006 to stand in Hamilton in 2007, it wasn't, I hadn't lost the thought that this was quite significant. That was an opportunity for us to win here, to make that difference. We didn't do that in 2007, but we did do it in 2011. But it was Winnie's legacy that drove me, because I thought, if I'm the first female MSP for Hamilton, and she was the first female MP for Hamilton all of those years ago, you were talking about 40 years of a distance, I wasn't even born when Winnie won Hamilton, and that was a huge privilege, but it was a huge responsibility as well. So taking forward, Winnie's legacy, building on it, realising that she was a foundation that was set there, that was quite a strong core vote who remembered what she did at the time, and I had to tap into that. I had to respect it, and also had to use it to build the foundations for the SNP in Hamilton, and we did that, and that won it. And I have to say, there's many shoulders of giants that I stand on that brought me to the place I am now, and I've never forgotten that. And Winnie Ewing is one of those ones that will always stand proudest, because she demonstrated to the people of Hamilton that this girl can, and I wanted to make sure that this girl could too.
I've admired Winnie Ewing from the first days I became conscious of Scottish politics, because her victory in Hamilton and what she then contributed to the debate in Scottish politics was so inspirational for all of us. And then I've had the good fortune to have her as a colleague, a mentor and a supporter in everything I've ever done in the SNP, and I shall be profoundly grateful for all that Winnie's done to help me in my contribution to the SNP. We had a fabulously fun-packed adventure in 1984 when, along with a bunch of students, we went off around the Highlands to support her election campaign, and we made the place rock day after day, and it was fantastic fun, and I learned so much about campaigning from that 1 week with Winnie Ewing.
I think Winnie is the foremost politician of our time in terms of absolutely transforming the future of politics in Scotland. The win in Hamilton was incredibly important. Personally, it's one of the first voices I ever heard standing up for the miners in Blantyre and the families there, when she discovered that the miners' families weren't paid and there was no sick pay if someone was injured in the pit, and her voice, making the case for workers' rights at that time. A really powerful message to me, who was born and brought up in industrial Lanarkshire. And of course, being from Lanarkshire, the Livingston Memorial, so important to us all, and that picture of her sitting on top of the world saying stop, Scotland wants to get on. What a brilliant message for the young women of Lanarkshire.
Well, it's obviously 50 years since Winnie won Hamilton, but 30 years ago, 1986 in fact, I went to Brussels with my other fellow students from Dundee University, and we met all the MEPs, and the one that stood out to everybody, regardless of affiliation, was Winnie, who took the entire class back to her apartment in Brussels. We had a fantastic night with singing, and some drinking happened as well, I'm sure I remember. But what I do remember from that time was Winnie was very concerned about each of the individual students. She knew that I'd been in the Falklands, and she was very concerned about how my mother had dealt with that whole situation as well. So one by one, Winnie has acted as an ambassador for Scotland and for the SNP right throughout that 50 years.
There isn't anybody who's contributed as much, I think, in the 20th century to take the party from what was a fringe position to centre stage. And Winnie did it because of a political gift, but also because of her genius for getting on with people. I had the experience as a young candidate in Clydesdale in the 87 election of campaigning on the last day with Winnie in Lark Hall. And she taught me how to campaign by shopping, going up the main street of Lark Hall and talking to everybody. She was essentially the original that took the idea of the SNP and tried to apply it to every single voter in Scotland and to enthuse every single voter. I have to say, ably assisted by Stuart, because Stuart's campaigning for spirit of politics was amazing. So the two of them together transformed Scottish politics, and we're the inheritors of that. Those of us who are ministers in the Scottish Government, those of us who had the privilege of fighting one referendum campaign, and I've got another one in us, it is she that made it happen.
I first met Winnie Ewing, it must have been in about 1973. Winnie had obviously won Hamilton and then been defeated, but my father was very active in the SNP in the northeast of Scotland and was quite determined that we would take all 3 seats along the northeast of Scotland. He was going to be standing in Banffshire, Douglas Henderson in East Aberdeenshire, and he wanted Winnie to stand in Murray to make up the triumvirate. And of course, as you know, the rest is history. They won all 3 seats, were part of the 7 and then the 11 in 1974, and made such an impact. And I think the solid foundations of the Scottish National Party and where we are today were built on the successes in the 70s.
Well, Winnie's contribution has been enormous, but so much to Scotland, but also so much internationally. And she was the woman that made sure that our cause and our case was known about internationally. She wasn't known as Madame Ecosse for nothing. She made sure that right across Europe, people heard the case for Scotland and Scotland's independence.
Well, I was 10 when my mother Winnie won the Hamilton by-election. My sister Annabel, now also a Scottish Government Minister, was 7, and my brother Terry, who's now investment analyst, was 3. And I can remember the party at the Zambezi afterward, and my goodness me, it was some party. I wish I'd been a bit older than 10 actually. And I can also remember the Hamilton Express that took us down to London, took my mother down to London, and being totally, utterly exhausted. But the excitement was passed on to the 3 of us, even although we were young children at the time. I also know this, I don't think I've told anybody this before, but my dad actually did put a bet on. And I think he put a bet of £200 in 1967. I mean, a lot of money by today's standards. And the odds of my mother winning the by-election, the odds were 9 to 1. So he got back £2,000. And I have to say, you know, my dad, well, he certainly spoilt the odds for everybody else in the SNP. Nobody's got 9 to 1 since then. But we then got exceptionally generous toys from my mum and dad, and we were a bit puzzled about that, but we certainly didn't complain. So it was a very happy time. And we're all immensely proud of my mum. And frankly, I don't think any of us would be here if she hadn't won.
With the SNP at its annual rally to the Boarstone at Bannockburn, and walking round the Boarstone and the wall, I noticed someone, a child, a young man, trying to climb up the Boarstone walls. That one told him, "Get down, you can't climb up there." To which he replied to me, "You can't tell me what to do. My mum's Winnie Ewing."
Well, Hamilton was the modern breakthrough for the SNP. I mean, there have been near misses in West Lothian in the early 60s and Pollock just a few months before Hamilton. But Hamilton was the time that the SNP got over the line. And they got over the line because a remarkable woman in Winifred Ewing, a truly remarkable woman, who was the right candidate at the right time to make that impact. But the impact, of course, has been felt for the last half century. I think it's fair to say that without the breakthrough in Hamilton, then the SNP wouldn't have emerged as a serious force in the early and mid-1970s. And without the breakthrough in the 1970s, you wouldn't have seen what came thereafter. That is the moves towards a Scottish Assembly and then a Parliament and referendum, the establishment of Parliament, SNP government, referendum and independence, and we believe independence within touching distance. So right back to that epic moment where a remarkable woman took on the Labour Party and political establishment and made sure that the world was stopped because Scotland wanted to get on.
It's quite hard to sum up Winnie's contribution to the SNP and to Scotland. She put the SNP on the world stage, firstly through that historic by-election victory in Hamilton, and then of course for many, many years as a member of the European Parliament, where she became known the world over as Madame Ecosse, putting Scotland as well as the party on a global platform. Winnie, of course, is unique in many ways. She is the only politician to have served in the House of Commons, in the European Parliament, and of course in the Scottish Parliament. Her contribution to the SNP, to Scotland and to politics generally is quite simply immense. And of all the very many memories, wonderful memories I have of Winnie's time in politics, that moment when she reconvened the Scottish Parliament has to stand as the most special one of all. When she uttered those words that the Scottish Parliament put into abeyance 300 years ago was hereby reconvened was a very emotional moment and one that will live long in history.
The Scottish Parliament, adjourned on the 25th day of March in the year 1707, is hereby reconvened.